So, hi everyone, my name is Haley. I'm here from ProWritingAid, and today with me is Joelle Hann. She is an award-winning writer whose essays and poems explore the nature of our deepest relationships and whose articles have covered the highs and lows of yoga culture, as well as food, film, books, and travel. Joelle has ghosted, collaborated, edited, and developed books on subjects as varied as self-transformation, activism, spirituality, health, finance, and business. She has worked with top CEOs and humanitarian activists, coaches, writers, scholars, entrepreneurs, and many, many others. Joelle is also actively writing and publishing her own work, so she knows what it means to be edited, and she treats her authors with the same rigor, intelligence, and kindness as she wants for her own work. We are so thrilled to have you here today, Joelle. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes.
And welcome to everyone who's here. How exciting. People from all over the world. I love it. And thanks for that introduction also. So today, as you know, because you read the copy, we're going to be talking about how to take the next step towards publishing, or how to even decide if you want to take that next step towards publishing. Like, what does that even mean? And this is a subject that, of course, writers think about a lot, but sometimes these fundamental steps are not fully outlined. So I'm going to take you through the process. I'm going to show you some slides. We're going to have time to talk, have questions answered, and it'll be really helpful. At least that is my wish, and that is what I've been working on. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So this is me. I'm Brooklyn Book Doctor, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And this is our workshop. When you're thinking of publishing, how do you take that first step? I'm in Brooklyn, no surprise, Brooklyn, New York, where it's really hot today. It's really, really hot. I'm hiding near the AC. And yes, here we go. All right, so what we're covering today is essentially what I've broken it down as is writing for pleasure, which I imagine is what a lot of you are doing. So you've got great ideas, you're really engaged with your imagination, you're engaged with the writing, with the written word, with how your sentences and paragraphs and pages go together. And there's a lot of pleasure in that process for you. It's very satisfying to get into the creative expression, creating stories or essays or whatever it is you're working on. And then there's the question of, now, do I take it forward into publication? And when do I take that leap? And also, how do I take that leap? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so why publish? That's a question we're going to think about. How do you know if your work is ready for publication? Also another good question. How do you know if you're ready for publication, for all the emotions that's going to bring up and the work that might be involved? If you decide you're ready for publication, how do you prepare your work so it gets the attention of editors? And what are some best practices that are essential if you want to publish? Okay, so just to go over a little bit what Haley said about who I am as Brooklyn Book Doctor. So Brooklyn Book Doctor is me and a few trusted colleagues of mine, but mostly me. And I work a lot on nonfiction, but I read a lot of fiction. So I have a literary background myself. I don't write fiction, but I write literary essays. I wrote and published poetry for a long time. And then I have this life as a book doctor, creating books with authors for major publishers in the US, such as Simon & Schuster, Tarcher Perigee, Sounds True, and more. I worked in-house in New York City as a development editor for about 10 years. And as a writer, I've published in the New York Times, on NPR, in Yoga Journal, Poets and Writers, and more. So I have both the perspective of a writer and the perspective of an editor. And recently, as Brooklyn Book Doctor, the perspective of a coach, somebody who is taking people through the process of writing and publishing. So that's who I am. And if you want to follow me after this session, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Brooklyn Book Doctor. Okay, so that's a bit about me. Okay, so let's deal with the first question. Why publish? So if you've been writing for a while, actually you don't even have to be writing for a while. You may just have started writing and you're really loving it. Your friends and family are responding really well to it, and it's pretty exciting. And the world is full of content. So why should you not also pursue publication? You know, this is a natural extension of writing, is to take it from this private world and put it out and have it in the public world. But it's also important to consider your why. Why do you want to be published? It seems like an obvious question, but actually there's a few parts to it that are good to know going into it to actually increase your chances of having a good experience. So on the pro side of why publish, of course, the most obvious, it feels great to have your name and your work in print. It's great to be accepted. I mean, that's just a natural human response. You want to see that the work you've done is valuable to people other than you, and you do want people to read it. You want people to engage with it. You want people to enter into the world that you've created and have as much pleasure in it as you have. They're going to have a different experience of it than you did, but they're going to have their own experience, which is really interesting and really cool and satisfying. And something happens when your work goes out into the world and it becomes its own entity out there outside of you. That is a really cool moment to know that that's happening and to see that happening. So that's the first pro. The second is it's great to have an audience. It's just you writing in wherever you are, in your room or in your house, or in the past out in a cafe or something like that. And suddenly you have an audience. You have some people who are reading you, and your work is no longer just happening inside, it's also happening outside. And that feels really great too. And sometimes you also get paid, which is, who doesn't like that? We all like to be paid. That just helps the experience to feel really good. So some obvious pros, some of the cons, which are not as obvious, but really good to know about. And I know I'm going to sound like a bit of a, I'm taking like a bit of a negative angle, but actually knowing these things is going to help you to go into the publishing process feeling like you know what it requires. And so it's not a surprise, or you're not tempted to take it personally, like there's something wrong with you or something wrong with your writing because these things are happening. This is just how the world of publishing works. And now here I'm really thinking about less about books and more about individual pieces, like a short story or an essay. With books is a little bit of a different story, and we can talk about that later if that's interesting to you. But I'm going to assume for now that you are writing shorter pieces and you're trying to get them published in print or online venues. So looking for venues to publish your work is a job. It takes time, and you have to know what's out there. You have to know what you like, and you have to know who's accepting work. And you also need to follow the guidelines really carefully. And the guidelines are different for each journal. There are some standards, but a lot of them have very specific requirements, and you have to know what each one requires, because believe me, there's nothing that says reject me than a piece that is not following the guidelines of the publication. So that's one con, is it's a bit of work to figure out where you want to publish and to get yourself ready to be published there. The second con has to do with your audience, which is that you can publish your piece and you may never hear anything about it from anyone who's read it. So you have this audience, you know it's there because you have been accepted to this magazine, and this magazine is producing content that people consume, but you might not know what happens after that. So your audience might be out there, but a little bit invisible to you. And third, if you get paid, the pay will likely be quite low. Like the most you might be paid for a general, say a literary publication, like a nice amount could be like $100 US. If you're publishing somewhere super, super top level, then you're gonna get more for that, but it's not gonna be a lot. Like it's not gonna be in the thousands of dollars, for example. So the pay is overall low. Sometimes that's fine because you just want to be published and that's what it's about, and that's great. But if you're looking at this as sort of a sideline business, it's probably not going to be that, just so you know. So this is why it's really good to consider your why. You got to think about, are you okay taking time away from your creative process to research the journals where you want to be published? You're going to have to learn about them. You're going to have to keep track of who is taking work right now and what happened when you sent your work to them. Did you get any notes back? Did they not ever respond? So you're going to have to chart all this. And this, everyone's busy and got lots of things to do and people to take care of. And in our upside down world, there's even more perhaps to be doing. You're going to have to add this on to what you're doing, looking for the venues and doing the necessary research. So are you okay with that? Second, are you okay not hearing from your readers, not getting any feedback from your audience? Sometimes writers have this idea that, okay, I'm going to publish and then I'm going to have these deep conversations with people all over the world, or I'm going to make all these new friends, or there's going to be some kind of a back and forth. That may not happen. So are you okay not hearing from your readers? And third, are you okay with having writing as your sideline? Because it's probably not going to pay your bills, at least for a while. So don't quit your day job. So in considering your why, consider what your answers are to these things. Is there time in your life? Are you okay with the feedback being minimal and not really making money off your writing? So another negative Nelly note, but really important to know, everybody gets rejected. Everybody, even people who win Pulitzer Prizes, high-end literary prizes, they get rejected too. Nobody escapes. It's really important to know this. And you may never know why, because a lot of the times the editors who run these magazines are either volunteer or they get an honorarium, or they're very low paid. So, and there's so much volume coming in. They don't have time to give you detailed feedback. In fact, if you get feedback from a submission, consider that an excellent sign that that editor has taken the time to tell you what's not working in the piece. And that is gold. That is gold. That's almost as good as getting accepted. That's when a rejection is not a rejection. It's when you get specific feedback that tells you how you can improve your piece. But the thing to keep in mind here is that a rejection is not personal. It's not a commentary about you. It could be a commentary on your writing, but sometimes it's really not. And really what you need to do is keep trying. So don't take a rejection personally. Don't take it as a sign that you have to stop. Really keep trying, submitting it other places, and believe in what you're doing. If it gets rejected by several places and it's not flying, then that could be a sign that it's time to revise or to take another angle. Sometimes you can take a piece, make some changes to it, and send it out. Like, for example, say it has something to do with what's in the news right now. Like we have this comet in North America, this comet passing through the atmosphere in a way that we can see it right now. Like maybe that you've written something about stargazing when you were a child, and oh, here's Neowise, this comet's coming, so you can tweak it to have something to do with the comet and send it out, and then maybe it's taken. So maybe it just needed a hook, but maybe it needs a full revision. So if it gets rejected by several places, you might want to think about, okay, maybe something needs to change in here for it to really work. Another thing to consider is the impact of publishing. And again, this might seem obvious, like it's just a great thing. If I get published, it's awesome. But there are some things to think about that I see with clients of mine that I really want to pass on to you so you can know ahead of time or work this into what you're thinking about as a writer who may want to publish. So yes, let's just acknowledge there's nothing like the thrill of getting an acceptance letter. We all want that. We all want to have our work out into the world. You get the acceptance letter, you get the journal, or you see the journal online, and you have bragging rights. You are now a legitimized writer, and you get to feel that way, and you get to be that in the world. You can put it on your resume, you can put it on your website. It is real now. So there's nothing like that. It is awesome every time. It never goes away. And also, the rush of new ideas you get from being accepted can be really helpful to your creative process. So feeling that your work has been appreciated, that people want to share it. It's a very satisfying feeling, and this can help you to keep going with other projects that might be maybe more challenging for you or maybe more experimental, so challenging for readers. Acceptance really feeds your creativity. So absolutely, 100%, it's awesome. Well, let's think a little bit about the cons of that too. So one of the really big ones that I see is that going towards publishing can, because of it requiring some work and because it requires some strategy, it can take you out of the creative act. So if you have just a little bit of time to write every day, say you have an hour every day, which for some of you might be a lot of time, then you might need to spend some of your writing time every week or spend several weeks of it planning out where your pieces might go, like where might they be published. And this takes you out of your right brain processing, out of that creativity where the stories and the essays are coming from, and puts you into your left brain of strategizing and analyzing, writing the emails, making the submissions, making the lists, or organizing yourself however it is that you're doing it. So you do have to put your creative work aside and then do this more organizationally oriented work. It's just two different parts of the brain. It's two different processes. It's sometimes very hard for them to live in the same person in the same day. So you give up some of your creative time in order to do this. The next one is tricky because it can be that your desire to be a legitimate writer and that desire to be published can start to become more important than your own engagement with your own imagination. So with your expression, with your interest, with your attention to your craft, if you're really, really like, I have to be published, I need to be a published writer, this has to happen, sometimes you can sell yourself out a little bit. So your allegiance would shift from your own work and really seeing what's coming out of you to going towards writing something that someone else is going to validate. So there's a subtle self-sabotage in there. I'm really on the side of people who have their allegiance set to their own creativity. And when it's time to publish, then it's time to publish, and you make the necessary things happen, but not at the expense of your creativity. So just want to put that out there. That is my bias. It's natural to want to be recognized, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. In fact, I think it's a wonderful thing. But publishing is the long game, and in these days, we're in a world that's very fast. You can click on something, you can join something, you can get something, you can have things. And publishing is not quite like that. It takes time. It takes time to submit things, to get things back, to resubmit them, to send them out, to keep going, and to not lose your momentum. So these are the cons of publishing your work, is that it can take you out of your creativity. You can start to crave the recognition more than enjoy the creative process. And you got to be in it for the long game, not for the short game, not for the quick hit. So it's a different orientation to what our world is all about. But it's still fun. And don't stop. And if you really want to be published, definitely still aim to be published, but work smart. Make it so that you get your creative time in and you have that time to do the research and create your lists. What I would really say is don't rush to publication, especially if it's long. You're working on something long like a novel or a memoir, which really benefits from incubation time, really benefits from your creativity. Don't rush. Give yourself time to gestate and to develop. That doesn't mean take a decade, although it may take that. I mean, plenty of great writers have taken a long time to write their books or their essays and creative pieces, but give yourself enough time. It's a balance. Another important thing in here is learn when and how to get feedback. So a little while ago, I was talking about how editors are too busy to give you feedback. And if they do, it's almost as good as getting an acceptance. But in the meantime, what do you do? What do you do to get feedback when editors are not really giving it? Well, you got to build up a group of people that you trust who can give you feedback on an ongoing basis. So tried and true method is to have a writing group. You want to have trusted people around you. That means people whose work you like, people whose comments make sense to you, you understand and you appreciate. You don't feel like that's wrong. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of that feeling that's wrong, let's face it, because we all love our work the best. But once you get over that, you think, oh, actually, they have a really good point. That's true. I think this could be changed. You want to have a small group of people like that around you that you can share your work with and that you can give feedback on, and you learn and you support each other no matter what. No matter if you're publishing or not, you will have them on your side. And at some point you might want to hire an editor to help you, but that will be a little bit down the road when you're going into being more serious about your publications. But an editor can come in and do many things for you, not just correct your spelling and grammar, which you might not need if you're using ProWritingAid, but they can come in and give you a deep perspective on what you're doing and help you to develop faster and better for the market, if that's what you're going for. Okay, so let's go back to how do you know if your work is ready for publication? So let's say let's just start with this. How do you know if your work is ready for publication? First of all, it's important to read widely in your genre. So if you're a fiction writer, you want to read what's being published in fiction right now and figure out what you like, what is the closest to your style of work, and who's taking submissions. That's true for essay writing also. It's actually true for books as well, but you're going to become a specialist in your field, become super knowledgeable about what you're going for and what's likely for you. So top tier publications for really top of the line writers, and this can be breakout writers too, but often it's more established writers, like the New Yorker, Granta, The Atlantic. These are all very hard to get into, but it's not impossible. First-time writers definitely have gotten into them, but you have to be exceptional. All the way down to smaller operations that are dedicated to giving new writers a break, such as Brittle Star in the UK and many others. There's a lot of stuff out there. You really need to do your research. Comes back to that. So read widely in your genre and then really think about, is what I'm writing somewhat in the ballpark of what's being published? Like, how do they compare? Like I said before, you don't want to be seduced into publish or die, like that kind of mentality, because then you give away your creativity, you undermine your own imagination. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, if our goal is to work smart, then you do want to know what's happening in your genre right now so that you know, okay, this publication is a likely match for me and this one really isn't. Or I'm not ready for this right now, but sometime in the future, I'm going to publish in this place. So be smart about it. And another way to be ready for publication is, like I was saying, have enough support. Have enough support as a writer. So have a writing group, like I was saying. Take classes, but don't get addicted to classes. Classes can help you, but really it's up to you to do the writing and to have the knowledge. Get feedback beyond your diehard fans, such as friends and family. Like, really understand, this is the most important thing, how your work is landing with people. So you might love it. You might love a word or a sentence or a character or a situation, a scene or something, but other people are not getting it. They're just not connecting. It can be tempting to say, what's wrong with them? It's so well done. It's so dramatic. It's so passionate. And the way that I crafted it is so great. But if they don't get it, your audience is not getting you. So you want to know that before you start to take things out to publication. So find enough support. And then third, dedicate yourself to the craft of writing, meaning really care about style and you can use something like ProWritingAid to help you with spelling and grammar, and they're going to give you some style suggestions. But ultimately, you want to be someone who cares about these things so that when you put in your 10,000 hours, you can just effortlessly master your sentences and your paragraphs. And that's how your voice comes through, is through mastering the craft. It's not a special sauce you sprinkle on. It's actually something that comes from your writing, your own writing. And the only way to get there is to care about how your writing is on the page, how it reads for other people, and how you use the tools of spelling, grammar, language, expressivity, poetry, how you use that to make your work shine. And just a note here that the stories and essays and books all come to life in the revision. So the first draft is the passion draft. That's where you get it all out and you're really in the moment and everything is heightened and exciting. And then in the revision and the polishing is where you bring all that craft in. Super important. Super, super, super important. This is where you're really becoming ready for publication and practicing being the kind of writer who is going to have things published and out in the world. Okay, so how do you research and how do you submit? First of all, like I was saying, learn which journals are taking the kind of work that you're writing. Seems obvious, but actually it's a little bit of work. And because it's a little bit of work, it can be a deterrent for people. So learn what genre you like, learn what resonates with you, learn what journals are important to you, and then learn about their submission processes. Read widely. Know who your favorite writers are in your genre and where are they publishing, or when they were starting out, where do they publish? And then identify for yourself, like I was saying before, your stretch goals, which is if you had all your publishing dreams come true, where would you like to see your work? Like what's your top level place? And have that as your stretch goal. Like pin it on your corkboard or on your computer or something and know like one day my work's going to appear there. But until then, I'm going to try to publish here and here and here and here and here. So work your way up to that. You can also ask friends who publish about their processes, how did they get started, and what is their top three, what are their top three things that they would suggest to do or not to do in the process, so you have some personal connection to it. So do the research in order to know where to submit and how to submit and what your stretch goals are. Oops, sorry. Okay. So getting down to the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty of how do you submit. There are some standard practices. Like I said, each journal is going to have its own requirements and its own processes that you need to follow, but there are going to be some things that are the same, such as write a short cover letter. Really keep it short. People don't have a lot of time. They want to know who you are, what it is, and what section of the journal or magazine you want it to go in. So write a short cover letter. Again, follow the submission guidelines very carefully for each particular outlet. And then also pay attention to your formatting. Make sure you are formatting like a pro. Double space your work. Use a neutral font, which means a readable font like Times New Roman or Cambria. Those are both really good. And put page numbers in your document. Some people do not want your name on it at all, and some people want it on there. Some people want word count, some people don't care. So make sure you know those things. But what I have here about spacing, font, and page numbers, definitely always do that. Here is a little formula for a cover letter. Again, short and sweet. So address the editor by name if you know it, and definitely spell their name correctly. You know this already, but I'm going to say it again, spell their name correctly. Don't disqualify yourself from the opening line. State the genre you're submitting, and also be sure the magazine takes that genre, and give the title of your piece that you're submitting. Give the word count. In the cover letter, it's fine to give the word count no matter what. And then if someone invited you to submit, definitely tell them who invited you to submit that piece. Always, if you have some connection to the journal outside of just a cold submission process, let them know. Let them know that you've got some kind of in with them. That's always good to do. and include a really succinct bio. So just a few lines. It doesn't matter if you have published before. If you haven't, that's fine. You don't need to. There are magazines, like I was saying, or journals that do specialize in publishing really super new writers, but let them know who you are and spell check everything. So again, some nitty gritty here. Identify 10 appropriate outlets. And now I still am talking about short stories or short essays when I'm talking about this, but you could graph this onto books as well. So identify 10 outlets that would be appropriate for your work. And then think about submitting to about 5 at a time. You want to keep track of where you submitted to and what the response time is going to be. A lot of them will tell you, and what the response was. And when you get a rejection, just send the next piece right out again. So you've always got pieces, say one piece out at 5 publications at the same time. So it's circulating. And keep doing this until it gets accepted. Again, if it's been rejected, say 3 or 5 times, then maybe it's time to look at it and see if there's something you can do to make it better. But don't give up. Don't give up on the revision process. Don't give up on the submission process. So here's an extremely short list of venues. If you go online and Google around, you will find lots and lots and lots. These I just found by doing a quick Google search. They happen to come, both of them, from the Right Life. One is where to submit short stories. One is where to submit personal essays. There's a lot of options here. These tend to list the very top level ones, but like I said, there are all kinds out there that are ready to take your work. So do your research. There are 2 other places. Submittable is a platform that a lot of journals use to accept your work or to tell you what their guidelines are. And they do have some information on their platform about deadlines coming up. Journals that are having calls for pieces and when to submit and how to submit. And then Duotrope, which has a free and a paid service, which is the same thing. It's a little bit broader. It also includes books and agents, and that's $50 US a year, I think. I don't have any association with them. I'm not getting any kind of kickback. I'm just telling you what's out there. So Submittable and Duotrope as platforms, and then these 2 places for short stories and personal essays from the Right Life. And that's it. That's it from me for now. As Haley said, I have a little gift for you. She put the link in the chat, and I think she's going to do it again. There's a downloadable freebie, and I'll tell you, it's a full color visual that tells you a little bit about the book publishing process. So with my clients, I really work on books, on coaching people to write their books, on editing books, and on collaborating on books. I'll just show you a couple of recent titles. There's this one, Step Up by Ash Beckham, and this one, Wild Mercy by Mirabai Starr. So just a couple out of the many that I've worked on, but I really work on books. So the freebie I have for you is, if you're at that stage where you're ready to think about book writing, or you think that that's in my future, then this visual guide is going to tell you about all the steps that happen between when you have that great idea and when you have a book deal. So it's really valuable, like I've been doing here today, trying to break down the basics for you that people don't always explain, so that you can have more of a chance of having a good experience when you go to submit. So Haley's going to put that in the chat. And there's some text on there that says, go here to claim your freebie, and there's nothing there for you, but it'll be in the chat. So thanks for being here, and I'm going to be around for questions. So I'm happy to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. We have a couple questions that came in. The first says, when you see really popular and successful memoirs like Untamed and Educated, what happens behind the scenes in terms of timeline to publication agent? How much was written before or after the book was slated for publication? Thanks so much for this really honest and helpful look at publication. And that's from, I think, Lilac, who's an aspiring memoirist.
Okay, great question. Yes, my approach is definitely the unvarnished approach, because I feel like it's much more helpful if you know what's actually happening than if I tell you it's going to be great and just go do it. So thanks for that feedback. I'm glad that that resonated with you. It's a great question. It's also almost impossible for me to answer that question, but I will tell you what, because I don't know what Tara Westover went through. I don't know what the authors went through. I don't know what their process was. But I can tell you that, for example, with Tara Westover, the author of Educated, that she was telling these stories to her friends before they ever became a memoir. And even, I believe, her PhD thesis, her PhD advisor was telling her, you need to write a book. So there was something, this is her particular story, and not, you can't generalize from this to every situation. So I'm just saying what I know about her. That she had been encouraged for a long time to write her story because it was so incredible. And then how did she get the book deal? I don't know, actually. I don't know. I don't know if she's even written about that or if anybody else has. But what I can tell you about memoir is that you do not need to write the whole thing in order to submit it for a book deal. But you do need, so memoir is considered nonfiction. You do need to have a book proposal. And you do need to have written a good chunk of that book. So 50 pages would be good, 50 pages to 100, so that they can see your writing, because memoir is going to rely on a dramatic story, which Tara Westover's story definitely was dramatic, great writing, and a publisher who sees a lot of potential in this person or this project. So you want to be able to showcase your writing. That's why you have to have a bigger writing sample for a memoir. But you do not have to write the whole thing first. The proposal will outline it, so they'll get a sense of what's in the rest that you haven't written yet.
Awesome. Okay, so Jonathan had a couple questions. And so Jonathan's first question was about journals that take your work, and Joelle had a couple links in there to place. I think he asked this before you showed the links about the journals that take creative writing work. But then he also asked just kind of generally, like, does the advice that you've given today work for books, for poems, short stories, all of the above, etc.?
Yeah, I tried to make this presentation so that it would apply for everything. Poetry journals are going to have different requirements than journals that take personal essays. Sometimes a journal takes both poetry and personal essays. So in this case, you definitely want to do your research, and you want to know what the venue takes and is it matching what you're doing. With book publishing, it is slightly different, but quite similar. You want to research what houses are taking the kind of book that you're writing. But you don't have to be a total expert in that, because if you're working with an agent, they are going to know that. But as an author, it's always good to know what's out there, to know who's doing what, who are the editors, who are the publishing houses. And obviously, if you're going to have an agent, you want to know who's representing books and who might want to represent yours. So similar to what I'm saying here, have knowledge going into the situation, so that you can make good choices, so that you understand the feedback you're getting back. If you're not getting any bites, maybe you're trying to get with the wrong agent or the wrong publishing house, or you're going too high, you're going too low. Like, you can actually make more of a decision about that if you have information. So do your research, commit to your writing process, commit to your editing process, make sure you're pitching the right thing. For example, with fiction, you have to write the whole book first. If we're talking about a book, fiction, you have to write the whole thing first. And you don't really need a proposal, or you need a really modified one. So you got to know those things. So again, yes, everything I'm saying today can kind of be extrapolated for every form that you're writing.
Awesome. Okay, those were the questions that we have. So we do have a little bit more time. So if anyone else has questions, you can feel free to drop them into the Q&A and chat, and we are happy to answer those. Yeah, I think the idea of it was really interesting what you were talking about how just the research about around finding the right publisher for you and the right venue and all of that would take away from your writing time. I hadn't really thought about that, especially for those of us where writing isn't our day job, or, where it's something we do extra. It's oh, there's this whole other piece that we really have to devote a significant chunk of time to. I thought that was really helpful.
It's really, really important. I really can't emphasize that enough, because the pleasure that you get from writing is actually a part of your own well-being and your own sense of like satisfaction. So you really need to decide how much time you want to spend putting yourself out there in this different way if your writing is really satisfying. So I'm not saying don't publish, but really think about like, how can you guard your writing time? My clients struggle so much to find the time to write. So I want everyone to really have the opportunity to protect that and enjoy that, not just to go for the fame and glory, which might be actually quite small.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul in the chat said, thanks for the insight. It's useful to make a realistic decision as a new writer to be able to kind of protect that time and figure out what makes the most sense for you. Wesley asked, would you suggest competitions as a good means to start getting one's work out there?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Competitions are a great way to do that. It's similar to publishing in a journal in that you're going to submit your work. It's going to be judged by usually celebrity judges or maybe the editorial board of the magazine. And then if you win something, then you can, again, you have the pleasure of saying, I won this thing, and you can put it out there as, you know, I'm the winner of this. That always helps. It feels really good. There's nothing wrong with that at all. The only thing about it, I would say, is that everyone's submitting, not everyone, a lot of people are submitting. There's a lot of submissions to everything. And I would say that competitions have even more submissions to them. So it's not a no-go. And even if you have to pay to submit, which is often the case, because like I said, these places are wildly underfunded and they rely on the $3 you pay through Submittable or the $25 fee you pay for a competition. They rely on that to stay alive. So you're feeding into that ecosystem. Your money is going to a good place, but it's going to be competitive. So do it and see what happens.
Awesome. So Fred asks about self-publishing. What are your thoughts on that?
So self-publishing, I'm going to assume you mean books and not essays or short stories. Self-publishing is an area that's really growing, and it makes sense to do it if you are a really DIY person and you can manage all the moving parts that go into creating a self-published book. People do it and they do it successfully, but you have to know that you're going to have to learn how to format a book and upload it to the various platforms that it needs to. It's not just Amazon. There are other ones to upload to price it, to get an ISBN. Like, you're going to be doing all of that stuff yourself. So just like in this, where I'm trying to give you like the real world perspective on what it takes to publish an essay, if you're going to self-publish, it's not just that you get to keep all the profits, it's that you also have to learn all the steps that go into creating a book on the practical end of it, not the creative end of it, the practical end of it. The other thing to consider is, do you have a platform of any kind? Who's going to buy your book and how are they going to find your book? Amazon is it's a huge search engine with a lot of things on it, not even books, or more than books, beyond books. So how are people going to find that self-published work? If you don't have a lot of people following you, then how are they going to find it? So really think about that.
That's actually a great segue, because Leslie had a question about branding. So Leslie said, what about your branding? I've heard you should have some short stories. So she is a novelist and not a short story writer, published in journals before shopping a larger project, but the novel is taking all of their time. Or how necessary is it to have something like 10,000 followers or on Twitter or something like that? Would that presence have an impact on landing an agent or editor?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say the answer is yes, that would have an impact on landing an agent or editor. So both publication and followers, yes. But if the writing is really great and the story is really great, then you may not need that. So it's sort of a yes and but. It's kind of both things are true. These days, there's a lot of emphasis on already having your own audience. Because you need to, the publisher also wants to know that you're going to be able to reach people with your book, and they want to know people already reading you. So they do like to see that. And if you can have that, if that's within reach, then definitely build that, go for that. If you're writing a novel, but you're not a short story writer, it might be hard to suddenly become a short story writer and try to publish those in order to seed interest in your book. It's the right way of thinking about it, but it might be hard to do if you're a novelist and not a short story writer. So you could think about other kinds of things, like maybe one of your chapters could become a short story, but if it's not organic, don't force it. Or maybe you could write some op-eds about something, like just to get your name out there somehow. Try to participate in things that are more public to make yourself visible, and try to meet people, go to some conferences or something and schmooze a little bit. I don't know when we're going to be doing that in the future, but that is one strategy. Most of all, write your novel. Really focus on writing your novel.
Awesome. Someone asked about if a publication says simultaneous entry is not advised, should you avoid submitting to other publications at the same time?
Yeah, if they don't like it, maybe don't do it. Or don't submit to them, and to only submit to places that take multiple submissions at the same time. Make a wise choice. It's not like your reputation is going to get around and you're going to be blacklisted if you do simultaneous submit. If they say absolutely not, do not ever do this, then really don't do it. If they're saying it's not advised, and there's probably saying it because people get published elsewhere and then don't tell them about it. And then if they accept it and you say, oh no, it's already published, it's just more work for them. So make your best call. But if that is part of their guidelines, I would say try to respect it.
Amazing. And then Liz asked a question about, does most of this content apply to fiction novels, which I think we said yes, like it can be extrapolated kind of out to all types of writing here, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then someone in the chat asked about publishing travel memoirs, if you had any advice about that specifically.
Well, it might be a good time to publish a travel memoir because nobody's really traveling and we're all missing it. So we could do some armchair travel. I'm not sure what the specific question is. Like, is it hard to publish that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was just kind of like any advice on travel memoir. So just get generic, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's the same thing as I was saying before. If it's a memoir, the writing has to be great. The story has to be compelling. So maybe it could be that you're asking, I've had this great trip, or I'm going to go on this great trip and I want to write about it and be a great memoir. Here's the tricky thing about memoir is that it's not actually the story, let's say in the travel context, it's not actually the story of every single place you went and every cool thing you saw. It's more like fiction in that there's a quest, there's something moving you forward, and there's somewhere you're trying to go. And everything that happens is building towards you either getting there or not getting there. So a memoir is got to have tension, it's got to have scenes, it's got to have drama. So if you can make it work within that, then fine. But if it's just like taking your journals from a trip you took and putting them together as a memoir, it's probably not going to get picked up. You want to think about what your reader is reading for. Yes, they want to go to these places, but they also want to be told a story. So you got to think about what's your story underneath all this travel that you're doing.
Awesome. Okay, I think those are all of the questions we have. So Joelle, thank you so much. I'm going to drop again Joelle's link to from Book Idea to Deal into the chat so you guys can take a look and connect with her there. And just thank you again so much. This was so great and so informative.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really had a great time, and thanks everyone for joining. It was great to have your questions and your attention on this hot July day. Well, it's hot here. Wherever you are, I don't know what it's doing, but it's really hot here. But thanks for coming. And thanks, Haley, so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, guys. See you later.
Okay.